My name is Upatissa. We live in extremely fortunate times to be born human beings and to have access to the teachings of the Buddha. Today, 26 centuries after the demise of Lord Buddha and his chief disciples, a small number of bhikkhus still aspire to practice the Eightfold Noble Path, having relinquished the material world. Bhante Candana is one of them, but his noble endeavors are unsustainable without our support. So, if you feel inspired by Bhante's teachings, please consider a timely donation from the right places goes a long way to prolong the Buddha's dispensation. May the blessings of the Triple Gems be with you. Sukhi Hotu.
For this week's Sutta exploration, we have a special request from a student, which happens to be the Sutta from the Samyutta Nikaya. It's the Yamaka Sutta. Yamaka, you see the term Yamaka in Pali several places. Oftentimes it's in reference to the pairs or the twins, in reference to suttas or themes or topics covered within a section that is granted the title Yamaka Vagga, for example, the section on the pairs. But in this case, Yamaka happens to be the name of a bhikkhu who was having some issues in his understanding, but he was not aware that he was having issues. He was pretty firmly tied down with his wrong view. And but it becomes a major opportunity for a discourse where we don't see Lord Buddha coming into or having this bhikkhu going to Lord Buddha to share his opinions on what he thinks the Dhamma is, but it is the chief disciple, Venerable Sāriputta, who does that, who goes to him to clarify. And we see how beautifully it shines through the way Venerable Sāriputta, so many aspects of who he was. Obviously, he was second in wisdom to Lord Buddha, so he was very, very wise, yes. But we also see the concern he had for a fellow bhikkhu who was on the wrong path. Oftentimes we neglect to consider the importance of views. We think it's just, it's something that's like a picture frame, like something that's hanging on the wall in your life, that it's there. It's just you refer back to it as needed, but it doesn't do any harm, type of a thing, a presence. No. In this path, in this Dhamma and discipline, which we call the dispensation of Gautama, Lord Buddha, the views are very important, views that one holds. In fact, when looked at individually as views, or ditti sometimes called, which also is connected with, as in the cases with the English, with vision, view, vision, sight, ditti or dassana in Pali, to see, sight, vision, view. It holds a huge place in one's own understanding, let alone when it comes to the teachings in general of Lord Buddha. The type of view one holds can make or break one's efforts. The entire training, the Patipada, can collapse, or at best, never reach anywhere. If the view is wrong view, it's ditti versus samaditi, right view, correct view. And in order for it to be correct, it needs to, well, first of all, be free from avidya, ignorance, such as we've covered this many times. Briefly, avidya would say, as it looks at something impermanent, it will go around looking for, within that impermanent thing, the conditioned thing, it will look for the unconditional. It will look for the permanent within that impermanent thing. Similarly, it will look for the pleasurable or enjoyable or the lovely experience within something that is the opposite of that, the painful, the uncomfortable. It will look for something substantial in the thing that is insubstantial, non-substantial, meaning looking for atta within anatta. So these would be ways to delineate, if you will, wrong view. Of course, these 3 points that I just mentioned are not the whole picture, but they give us a good idea. But primarily, the avidya goes back to the personhood, the identification with the thing, the experience, whether it's a feeling, whether it's a thought, a perception, an idea, a concept, including the Dhamma. We always like to, not in a good way, ground ourselves, anchor ourselves in something. I just remembered when that one time that I jumped out of a plane as a gift to myself for scuba diving. I'm sorry, skydiving. And it was about, this was happening in Los Angeles, and as I was about to go out of the window or the door of this plane, there were dive masters with me, but they were going to join me down to a certain elevation, and then they separated. But as I jumped, the body, I was watching the mind, I was watching what was happening, and the body was obviously looking for somewhere that it could find security and safety, somewhere for it to land after the first few feet in midair. But you're going down. Think of it as 1 story, 2 stories, 3 stories, 10-story high building. Eventually, the brain just locks you out. You go unconscious because it was beyond its level of tolerance. Why? And it's very quick. A second, barely a second passes, and then you come to. Your consciousness just rejoins, and you see that you're still falling, and there's nothing for your feet or your body to touch yet. It's kind of locked into our survival instinct, perhaps. But this goes deep, the wanting to find security, even in concepts and perceptions that we have. That's why every time a person is delving into any kind of arena, in intellectual, academic arena, any type of endeavor, we always have a propensity, a tendency, an underlying drive to go ahead and lock on, identify with that thing, to look for security in that thing, in that relationship, in that idea, in that new concept, to find a shadow, our shadow. And the Dhamma does the opposite of that. The Dhamma is all about dismantling all that, because everything is conditioned. And there's only one unconditioned, and that is Nibbana, which is something that is the biggest challenge for the mind of the Putujjana, which happens to be now represented in the example of Venerable Yamaka, the main character around whom the sutta revolves. But thanks to him and his wrong view, we will get a beautiful discourse from Venerable Sāriputta. So without further ado, let's jump in. This sutta is from the Samyutta Nikaya, the Connected Discourses, sutta number 22.85. And then within that, there's a subcategory of Samyutta, Connected Discourses under that umbrella, but these ones will be called, Khanda, dealing with the five aggregates. Connected Discourses dealing with the aggregates. And then within that, there's a subsection that is called the Tera Vagga. Tera in this case means the bhikkhus, especially the elder bhikkhus in those days. Today, we just use teras for all bhikkhus who have, are bhikkhus, meaning they have upasampada, meaning they have higher ordination. So, Sutta number Samyutta Nikaya SN 22.85, Yamaka Sutta. Discourse to the Venerable Yamaka. This is what I personally heard. Once, the Venerable Sāriputta was living in Savatthi at the monastery offered by Anathapindika in Jeta's Park. It was during that time that a destructively malignant view had surfaced in the mind of a certain bhikkhu with the name of Yamaka. His bad view was the following. The way I see and understand the Dhamma being taught by the Blessed One is that any bhikkhu who has attained the state where his heart's contaminants, the asavas, are fully destroyed, upon reaching the end of life with the breakdown of the body, at that moment of death, he becomes no longer existing after death. Already, you see problems with this, especially if you've gone over the Brahmajala Sutta, or the net of views, the 62, 63 views that we see that Lord Buddha demolishes, because they all are based on contact. Tadapi paccaya, Lord Buddha says, when every single ascetic or wandering, recluse from a different tradition comes and throws at Lord Buddha their views, Lord Buddha says, yeah, take it easy. That also is based on contact. Therefore, the view is conditioned. But the view is extremely important, because that is the very thing that will take us to the unconditioned. So it needs to have some windows to it. It shouldn't be so constricting. This one is very constricted, because already he's saying that the bhikkhu is definitely does not exist after death, if he has completely eradicated the asavas, the fetter, the contaminants. Well, Lord Buddha never said that. You don't see it anywhere. But many of these bhikkhus have joined the ranks of the Sangha. They've become bhikkhus having already subscribed to, in the past, to various different thoughts and ideologies, schools of thought that were different than the Lord Buddha's teachings. But because there are certain terminology, for example, Dhamma. Well, you have different Dhammas. If you were practicing Jain, for you, the Dhamma has a different meaning. If you're a Brahmin, for you, Dhamma means something else. Similarly with Kamma. Oh, it's the same term. Yes, let's go. It's like modern day people coming by and asking or presuming that, oh, you meditate. Oh, okay, so I meditate too. Boom, we are both meditators. Well, hold on. There's peaks and valleys of difference between us in the practice. So many bhikkhus were, despite the fact that they had gone through the dependency stage with a teacher, many of them held on to their opinions and views, Venerable Yamaka being one of them. So let's continue. Now, a number of bhikkhus, on hearing this pernicious view arisen within the Bhikkhu Yamaka, went and quickly approached him in order to discuss this important matter. Thus, after having exchanged friendly greetings with the Venerable Yamaka, the visiting bhikkhu sat to one side and asked him in turn by saying, "Could it be true, friend Yamaka, that such a destructively malignant view has surfaced in your mind, whereby you claim, the way I see and understand the Dhamma being taught by the Blessed One, is that any bhikkhu who has attained the state where his heart's contaminants, asavas, are fully destroyed, upon reaching the end of life with the breakdown of the body, at that moment of death he becomes no more, no longer existing after death." Basically, or essentially, what this is saying is he's promoting an annihilationist view. Poof, gone. Now, Lord Buddha didn't say yes or no to that. Remember, this is one of the 10 questions that Lord Buddha just put it aside because it's badly formulated. Plus, it does not lead you to destroy suffering, to get rid of suffering. It doesn't do anything other than just feed some curiosity and create more and more philosophical debates and arguments. There's no end to trying to answer that question. So here we have a bhikkhu who is, so basically the monks asked him, reiterated, to see if that is the case. And I've never come across any sutta where there is an incident, a situation where they just come, people who have heard someone saying something that is adhamma, to just come and just admonish and barrage him with criticism and this and that without first having checked to see if that were the case, that they actually said this. So that's what they're doing, they're checking. Now, and they're asking, continuing to ask, "Now, is this exclamation of yours true?" "Indeed it is, friends," replied the Bhikkhu Yamaka, as he repeated his claim. "The way I see and understand the Dhamma being taught by the Blessed One, any bhikkhu who has attained the state where his heart's contaminants, the asavas, are fully destroyed, upon reaching the end of life with the breakdown of the body, at that moment of death, he becomes no more, no longer existing after death." Friend Yamaka, do not say such things. You are misrepresenting the Blessed One. Do not misrepresent the Blessed One, O friend. Misrepresenting the Blessed One brings many evil consequences to you, friend, as it is never a good thing to misspeak the words uttered by the Blessed One. For the Blessed One would never speak such words as, "Any bhikkhu who has attained the state where his heart's contaminants," so they're repeating that. But despite all their efforts at trying to remove this malignantly dangerous view from the heart of the Bhikkhu Yamaka, he still arrogantly refused to listen to the admonishment of his fellow companions in the holy life. Thus, the Venerable Yamaka obstinately continued holding on to his adhammic and pernicious view, as he insisted, "The way I see and understand the Dhamma being taught by the Blessed One, any bhikkhu who has attained the state where his heart's contaminants are fully destroyed, upon reaching the end of life with the breakdown of the body, at that moment of death, he becomes no more, no longer existing after death. We presume that the world of Dhamma, in a sense, well, the dispensation, the monastic order specifically, the Sangha, that has brought us the Dhamma, that it has been kept in its pure state. Unfortunately, that is not true. There's a lot of junk that has been added. There's a lot of wrong view on part of bhikkhus over centuries that have been added, which are evidenced by the current tendency or the traditional ways of cultural elements that have been added within the teachings. You go and participate almost in any temple activity these days, especially ethnic groups and this and that in different parts of the world of Theravada Buddhists. You'd be surprised to hear. I mentioned Venerable Yamaka's position as being more annihilationist. Well, what you have in turn today is the eternalist view being promoted, which is equally bad. One of the other views that Lord Buddha demolished. Unfortunately, people who don't practice, people who don't become arahants, people who don't have right view even, what they will promote is they will take the Dhamma and they will morph it into something that is palatable to them, understandable to them. This is what has happened with the commentators over centuries. But today, we don't necessarily have as many commentators as individual bhikkhus promoting such wrong views to the masses. To the masses, living bhikkhus speaking to living Buddhists in temples, such as when so-and-so dies, or, people make offerings. Oh, could you, Bhante, chant to transfer merits for this person, my loved one, this and that. Or this bhikkhu dies. Usually within the same sentence, we also hear, and may he attain Nibbana Supreme in his next life, or where he's headed. Countless times I've heard this, again and again. People believe this because it's easy to conceptualize, to relate to, rather than leaving it open at the end, where the person goes beyond the conditioned. But for the common person, their position, including the Buddhists, that's what I'm trying to say, there's no difference as it relates to the afterlife compared to, let's say, a Christian or a Muslim person or a Hindu person looking at what happens after death. Well, there needs to be a difference between a person who's a practitioner, somebody who understands the Dhamma, and everyone else. Because what you have today is the infusion for many, many centuries, for a millennia actually, of this eternalist view that is a poison that has been pushed and pushed, shoved into the suttas. And that's why many of these suttas will never be covered in weekly Dhamma discussions, because it challenges such ideologies, such views. So that's why we're doing this. We're going over these suttas to take us back to the original teachings of the Buddha, simply because we claim to be Theravada, representing Theravada tradition does not mean much. When the view is wrong, the understanding is not correct. And here we see an actual living, breathing bhikkhu at the time of Lord Buddha, because Venerable Sāriputta is still alive, And Venerable Sāriputta is going to go and speak to him. So let's come back to the sutta. Meanwhile, those other bhikkhus, on seeing that they were unable to change the Venerable Yamaka's mind from holding on to this wrong view, arose from their seats and went straight to the Venerable Sāriputta and reported to him what they had heard and witnessed, while also adding, if only the Venerable Sāriputta would go and speak to the Bhikkhu Yamaka out of compassion, it would surely help him to change his position. And on hearing their report, the Venerable Sāriputta agreed by maintaining silence. It's a big deal. They didn't have censorship. Well, today we don't have, it's the wrong kind of censorship. Fact checking. This is the proper fact checking. This is what we're seeing here. Where you have bhikkhus who know the Dhamma, obviously, because they went straight to the mouth of the beast, to the Yamaka, and said, did you say this? This is wrong. Do you know that? But fortunately for them, and especially Venerable Yamaka, Venerable Sāriputta is still alive. So he's going to go and drop some sense into his head. And then in the evening, coming out of his seclusion, the Venerable Sāriputta went and approached the Bhikkhu Yamaka's kuti. After exchanging friendly greetings with him, he sat down at one side and addressed the Bhikkhu by asking, is what I heard true, friend Yamaka, that such a destructively malignant view has surfaced in your mind, whereby you claim the following: the way I see and understand the Dhamma being taught by the Blessed One, any bhikkhu who has attained the state where his heart's contaminants, the asavas, are fully destroyed, upon reaching the end of life with the breakdown of the body, at that moment of death, he becomes no more, no longer existing after death. You have heard correctly, friend, for that is exactly how I understand it, replied the Bhikkhu Yamaka. Then the Venerable Sāriputta said, see, this tells us about the personality of Venerable Sāriputta. Remember, in other suttas where Lord Buddha is referring to Venerable Sāriputta as being like Mother Earth, so compassionate and loving and accepting. Whatever you throw into the earth, whether it's dung, excrement, urine, blood, feces, vomit, gold, water, fresh water, beautiful jewelry, whatever, Mother Earth will accept it without any distinction, without any preferences. He says, Sāriputta is just like that. That kindness, that compassion is seen throughout the suttas, in all the Nikayas, whenever we come across Venerable Sāriputta. And here's another evidence of that, where he did not attack him. He didn't say, what are you, crazy? What's wrong with you? Lord Buddha, if he was there, he would say, foolish man. He wouldn't even call him bhikkhu. He would say, straight out, he would call him foolish man. Demotes him from being a bhikkhu even. But here, Venerable Sāriputta is going to try a different, you can almost see the compassionate motherly role that he played throughout the Sangha. What do you think, friend Yamaka? Would you consider form, rupa, to be permanent or impermanent? It is impermanent, friend, replied the Bhikkhu Yamaka. How about feelings, vedana, friend Yamaka? Would you consider them to be permanent or impermanent? They are impermanent, friend. What about perceptions and memories, the sanya? Friend Yamaka, would you consider them to be permanent or impermanent? They too are impermanent, friend. How about habitual drives, the sankhara? Friend Yamaka, would you consider them to be permanent or impermanent? They are impermanent, friend. And what about sense awareness or consciousness, vijnana? Friend Yamaka, would you consider them to be permanent or impermanent? They are also impermanent, friend. Therefore, friend Yamaka, whatever kind of matter or form, whether related to the past, future, or present, be it internal or external, gross or subtle, of an inferior or superior quality, whether far or near, this bhikkhu sees all this as it truly is and with the necessary wisdom. Thus, this is not mine, This is not a part of me. This is not myself. So he's trying to disengage him, sever the connection that he has. As we're seeing, he's starting from the aggregates. Because it all comes down to that. Even views that we hold on so tightly, we've identified with, when you go digging deep to the roots of that, as to where that pernicious view of ours comes from, there is some level of attachment, some form of grabbing to the aggregates. Some form of it, some part of it. That's why Venerable Sāriputta goes straight to the main core, crux of the problem. But he just talked about rupa, the first of the aggregates, so he's going to go with the other four now. Whatever kind of feeling, whether related to the past, future, or present, be it internal or external, gross or subtle, of an inferior or superior quality, whether far or near, this bhikkhu sees all this as it truly is, and with the necessary wisdom, thus, this is not mine, this is not a part of me, this is not myself, including the feeling, as well as the feelings that Venerable Yamaka is having at that moment when Venerable Sāriputta is putting him on the spot and clarifying this. Because emotions will arise in hearing this. There's contact being made with the voice of Venerable Sāriputta. He's talking to him. He's challenging him. So feelings will arise. Whatever kind of memories or perceptions, whether related to the past, future, or present, be it internal or external, gross or subtle, of an inferior or superior quality, whether far or near. This bhikkhu sees all this as a true, by the way, inferior or superior quality, perceptions or sanya or memories, it might be something sublime, such as, or beautiful, like Venerable Yamaka, let's say, being in the presence of Lord Buddha and being moved by his presence, by a gesture, by something that he heard. So that gets locked in as a form of memory in his mind. So that also, he says, whether inferior or superior quality, all that, it must be seen as it truly is with the necessary wisdom. Thus, this is not mine, this is not part of me, this is not myself. This is conceit I am, asmimana. It is at the backbone, it is the very glue that allows one to grab on to the aggregates. That conceit, me, mine, this has to do with me, this is part of me, this is my view, my opinion, my experience, my truth. All that must be seen for what it is, Lord Venerable Sāriputta says. Whatever kind of habitual tendencies or drives, sankhara, whether related to the past, future, or present, be it internal or external, gross or subtle, of an inferior or superior quality, whether far or near. This bhikkhu sees all this as it truly is, and with the necessary wisdom. Thus, this is not mine. This is not a part of me. This is not myself. Whatever kind of sense awareness or consciousness, vijnana, whether related to the past, future, or present, be it internal or external, gross or subtle, of an inferior or superior quality, whether far or near. The bhikkhu sees all this as it truly is, and with the necessary wisdom. Thus, this is not mine, this is not part of me, this is not myself. Thus, on seeing the truth and that these things are all impermanent, the noble disciple in training becomes disenchanted. Experiencing disgust towards all forms, he becomes disenchanted. Experiencing disgust towards all feelings, he becomes disenchanted. Experiencing disgust towards all perceptions and memories, he becomes disenchanted. Experiencing disgust towards all habitual drives, he becomes disenchanted. Experiencing disgust towards all types of sense awareness or consciousness. In this way, by becoming disenchanted and experiencing disgust, the bhikkhu grows dispassionate. Then, this leads him to relinquish his grip from holding on to anything. By no longer grasping onto anything thus, he neither becomes anxious nor restless or agitated. And no longer becoming agitated, he experiences the ultimate relief that is Nibbana. Now, at that very instant, the bhikkhu comes to know personally with his direct understanding. Birth is finally destroyed. The holy life has now been fully lived and its goal achieved. There is no more coming back to any state of becoming. Last week, I covered a sutta with you on the 5 ways. It was from the Anguttara Nikaya. 5 ways that a person may attain nobility, may experience Nibbana. The first one was through listening. Venerable Yamaka, here at this point, in hearing the words and listening carefully, openly to the words of Venerable Sāriputta, at this point attained Sotapatti. He no longer was a Puttujana. Please don't take the listening of the Dhamma lightly. It has everything to do with us, with how we're listening. The Dhamma is there. However one may interpret, translate it, it will never reduce, be reduced to a lesser version. The heart will recognize the Dhamma, despite the era we're living in. So here, despite the fact that Venerable Yamaka was holding on obstinately to that view, he relinquished. He listened. Such a beautiful way. He's like, this is key, because today you have all kinds of individuals claiming, even in some cases, arahantship, and still remaining as a layman, let alone other stations of it, and go living a life with passions and all kinds of interests. Again and again and again throughout the suttas, we see clearly the importance of nibbida and viraga. Nibbida is when the mind the heart becomes disenchanted by things that used to excite you, that would get you so animated and enjoying and passionate about life. That drops. All those, the raga, the lust, it just drops. So you cannot maintain that kind of approach to things while having experienced Nibbana. They just won't go together. It's impossible. Let alone if somebody is truly an arahant. They will walk away from all kinds of responsibilities of a layman. They won't even have hair. They want to cut it because it's too much of a burden to comb it. So it's extremely important to acknowledge the non-agitated state of mind that a noble disciple is becoming more and more seasoned in, if you will. Now, the sutta doesn't stop there. So, Venerable Sāriputta, in many suttas, we see that he did not have the level of attainment, in a sense, in the iddhis, or the psychic powers, or meeting heart to heart, or seeing the minds of others. He didn't have that quality, let's say, such as Venerable Anuruddha, or obviously Venerable Mahamoggallana, or especially Lord Buddha, to know what happened in Venerable Yamaka, that he attained the first stage. So being the driven, compassionate, motherly teacher that he was, he's going to go deeper to helping Venerable Yamaka. Now, friend Yamaka, do you look upon the Tathagata and see him as form? No, friend, I do not. Do you look upon the Tathagata and see him as a collection of feelings? No, friend, I do not. Do you look upon the Tathagata and see, Tathagata is obviously Lord Buddha here, in case you didn't know, and see him as a collection of perceptions or memories? No, friend, I do not. Well, do you look upon the Tathagata and see him as a collection of habitual drives, sankharas? No, friend, I do not. Do you look upon the Tathagata and see him as a collection of sense awareness or consciousness? No, friend, I do not. So basically, do you look upon, do you see, when you're looking at Lord Buddha, do you see him as a collection of the aggregates? And that's it. He says, no. In that case, friend, so he's going to switch now. The questioning. In that case, friend Yamaka, do you look upon the Tathagata as the product of form? No, friend, I do not. Do you look upon the Tathagata as the product of feelings? No, I do not. So this kind of questioning will go on and on. So I want to now kind of abbreviate some parts of it. Do you look upon the Tathagata as the product of perceptions or memories, sanya? No, friend, I do not. How about habitual drives, sankharas? No, friends, I do not. Do you look upon the Tathagata as the product of sense awareness or consciousness? No, friend, I do not. Do you then consider, friend Yamaka, the Tathagata to be a combination of all these taken together, of form, feelings, perceptions, and memories, and of sense awareness or consciousness? No, friend, I do not. Well, friend Yamaka, would you then consider the Tathagata to be without form, feelings, perceptions, and memories? So if you're saying that he's not, then are you saying that he is, Lord Buddha, he is empty of, is there without some type of a reliance on the five aggregates? And he says, no, friend, I do not. So it's so important to ask questions. So much is revealed, not necessarily by another answer, or especially an answer that we want or we anticipate to get with a certain question. But when a question is posited in place of an answer, sometimes, if not in many cases, it really broadens the horizon. It allows the mind of the person, the questioner, to really come out from a limited perspective, as we're seeing here. And it's also Lord Buddha as one of his favorite ways of answering in some cases. Well then, friend Yamaka, do you look upon the Tathagata as someone who is beyond form, existing beyond form? Now, if you say yes to that, then it means he lives beyond form and that's it. Okay, so he can't be beyond form and in form, in, having a form, but being beyond it. So he's now challenging his view of either this or that. No, friend, I do not. Do you look upon the Tathagata as someone who is beyond feelings? No, friend. How about perceptions or memories? No, friend, I do not. How about beyond sankharas? No, friend, I do not. Do you look upon the Tathagata as someone who is beyond sense awareness or consciousness? No, friend, I do not. In that case, friend Yamaka, do you then consider the Tathagata as someone who is merely a combination of all these aggregates put together? That is, of form, feelings, perceptions, and memories, and of sense awareness or consciousness? No, friend, I do not. Well, how about this, friend Yamaka? Would you consider the Tathagata as someone who is without form, feelings, perceptions, and memories, and sense awareness or consciousness? No, friend, I do not. But, friend Yamaka, if it is truly as you say, that you don't consider or look upon the Tathagata as someone who is solidly existing in the first place, then how could you still declare the following? the way I see and understand the Dhamma being taught by the Blessed One, any bhikkhu who has attained the state where his heart's contaminants, the asavas, are fully destroyed, upon reaching the end of life with the breakdown of the body, at that moment of death, he becomes no more, no longer existing after death. After all, friend, because obviously if this person is not going to exist after his death, I'm accepting the fact that he's existing though now. So now you exist, then you don't exist. Even today, science, physics tells you energy cannot be created or destroyed. A law of thermodynamics. After all, friend, remember how whenever the Tathagata describes to us, bhikkhus, the state of the Tathagata as the Supreme Being, the Blessed One who has self-awakened to the highest, having crossed the flood, the perfectly awakened one. He does explain this without any reliance on views of whether the Tathagata exists after death, so it's not a condition, or whether the Tathagata does not exist after death, or whether the Tathagata both exists and does not exist after death, or whether the Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist after death. So these four are invalid. These have nothing to do with the fact that the Tathagata is. So by the way, these have to do, the four fall into the 10 questions that many ascetics would come, philosophers would come wanting to corner him. Because you will corner a person if they fall into that trap, because you're now dropped back into the conditionality. And the Dhamma, in the sense of the deathless, Nibbana is the unconditioned. So there's no way that you can use the conditioned to describe, to validate the unconditioned. The most you could do is use negative language. And that's what Lord Buddha would use to describe Nibbana. He would say, where there's no sun, no moon. That would really throw people off. There's no up, there's no down. Okay, go deal with that. How are you going to wrap your mind around that? Nothing to ground yourself on, no concept to ground upon. So similarly, he just pointed this out. So if you are the student of Lord Buddha, you also know that his declaration of him being a Tathagata is not dependent on these four conditions or any of them. Then, having carefully listened to the Venerable Sāriputta's words, the Venerable Yamaka replied by saying, because Venerable Sāriputta just asked him, how could you go on thinking like that? So this is Venerable Yamaka's response. Dear friend Sāriputta, earlier and up to just a moment ago, while lost in my own ignorance, I was arrogant, for I obstinately kept grasping onto that evil and unwholesome view. But now, that no longer holds true, because I have heard the voice of reason through this beautiful Dhamma talk from my friend, our dear Venerable Sāriputta. Therefore, because of your elucidating and clear instruction, friend, no such pernicious view is to be found within me anymore, for it has fallen away. Having penetrated it, I have now finally seen the Dhamma. That is his lion's roar, his declaration of him attaining at the very least Sotapatti. Seeing the Dhamma means the person now has the Dhamma eye, Dhamma chakra, which means whoever it is speaking to this person, in the presence of this person, witnessed by this person, who's experienced the seeing of the Dhamma, if they speak Adhamma, this person will know it. Doesn't matter who it is. They will identify the Adhamma from the Dhamma, and vice versa. No one can fool them. No one can fool them because they have the eye. They could see the Dhamma. And the Venerable Sāriputta continued his questions by asking further, So now, remember, this is not Venerable Anuruddha. Venerable Anuruddha would just peek through his heart, his mind, and he would just know, oh, okay, yeah, he's a Sotapanna. You can't hide from him or Venerable Mahamoggalana. Lord Buddha would see. Venerable Sāriputta did not have some of the commentators that said that he never was interested in attaining those siddhis or iddhis, the psychic abilities. His goal was attaining wisdom, and he had it. So, but Venerable Sāriputta, being the elder bhikkhu, the chief monk, he wants to make sure the next time this monk goes to Lord Buddha's presence, he won't be in trouble. So much compassion is here when Venerable Sāriputta continues asking. And how about, friend Yamaka, if others approach and ask you the following? Friend Yamaka, considering the case of a bhikkhu who has attained a state where his heart's contaminants, asavas, are fully destroyed, upon reaching the end of life with the breakdown of the body, at that moment of death, he becomes no longer existing after death? What might your response be to them then? So he's now testing him. If, friend Sāriputta, others approach and ask me, friend Yamaka, consider, so he's repeating that question, then I will answer them in the following manner. Friends, do know that form itself is impermanent, and whatever that is impermanent is suffering. After all, it is innately suffering due to the fact that it ceases and passes away. Remember earlier I was talking about wrong view? Ditthi, or view, is based on not seeing the presence of impermanence, suffering, the non-substantiality, meaning the three characteristics of existence. So he's saying, I will be answering them by saying to them that form itself is impermanent, anicca. Form itself, because it's anicca, is suffering. And it constantly changes, it constantly passes away, and good luck finding a soul or a self in there. Also, friends, feeling itself is impermanent, and whatever that is impermanent is suffering. After all, it is innately suffering due to the fact that it ceases and passes away. People live with people. We have relationships with others, with things, with pets, with houses, with things that are inanimate. And when these things are no more or change for one or more reasons, suddenly everything breaks down we lose it. We get agitated, we lose focus, we lose our harmony, we lose the state of peace in the mind. Why is that? Where does the surprise come in? Because, remember what I was sharing with you in the beginning? Of the essence of avidya is looking for the permanent thing in the impermanent. We're looking for the beautiful in the ugly, in the repulsive. Next time you're going to eat that delicious meal, use a microscope. Or when you shower and your skin looks or smells so nice, this and that, you go ahead and put some electron microscope over your skin. You're going to be shocked to see some wild animals there that feed off of you. Worms in this freshly made, farm to table meal that costs you a fortune, delicious vegetables, this, that, beautifully made. And you zoom in with an electron microscope, not actually microscope, we don't even have to go that deep. You're going to see worm-like, parasite-like things moving around. Or your gut. Or you have a beautiful body. Or you have you're beautiful, you're attractive. Oh yeah? Let's take a swab test. Let's put it under a microscope. You see where the beauty lies. But, so all these things, they're changing. I can't believe he's dead. I can't believe she's dead. I can't believe he's gone or she's gone. Why can't you believe that? Which part is, where does the unbelievable part come in? Do you know of anyone who's lived forever? Or is living forever? Also, friends, perceptions and memories are themselves impermanent, and whatever that is impermanent is suffering. After all, it is innately suffering due to the fact that it ceases and passes away. Even memories, we embellish them, we colorize them. It's like we use Photoshop on them. We doctor the memories depending on how we felt and how we feel, plus the interest of years added. And then you meet someone who was there, and when that moment happened, they were completely privy to what happened, first-hand experience of that incident, the event, and then you recount your memory, and they look at you stunned. That's not how it happened. You have to do a double take. What if you have more than one person who will invalidate that memory? Well, there goes that. Even memories are impermanent. Even the good ones. Especially when, let's say, you're with someone and you break up, and in case of a layperson, and when you break up, suddenly those beautiful songs that you would listen to, they are torture. If they come up on the radio station, what happened? They were giving you life. And now the tears you cry are bitter tears. So you see, also, friends, habitual drives are themselves impermanent. And whatever that is impermanent is suffering. After all, it is innately suffering due to the fact that it ceases and passes away. So sankharas are also impermanent. Also, friends, sense awareness or consciousness is itself impermanent. And whatever that is impermanent is suffering. After all, it is innately suffering due to the fact that it ceases and passes away. That's why we have the rewind button. If you are from the 80s or even earlier, and you remember, VHS tapes, VCRs, or tape players, rewind button to rehear, to rewatch the pleasant, the enjoyable, the lovely vijnana. Why? Because it is impermanent, it passed away. And you know what the forward button was for? To push forward what is undesirable, the opposite of lovely, the uncomfortable scene. You hit the forward button. In our mind, we have something that's that works similar to those two buttons in one. We call that asati, the lack of mindfulness. You push through life. Yeah, I don't want to see this moment. I don't want to be here. We don't say it, we just fast forward it. We're absent to that moment. Therefore, friend Sāriputta, whenever asked that question, I would answer in such a manner. Sadhu, sadhu indeed, friend Yamaka, replied the Venerable Sāriputta, while adding. Sadhu means wonderful, excellent, I consent, among other definitions. Now, friend Yamaka, I'm going to share a simile with you to help you understand the deeper meaning of this even better and more clearly. Now, Venerable Sāriputta might have a clue as to what's happening in the mind, in the heart of Venerable Yamaka. So he wants to help him go deeper, because remember, Venerable Sāriputta himself attained Sotapatti merely by listening to Venerable Assaji give a single line from those crucial 4 verses that he heard as Upatissa. He wasn't Venerable Sāriputta then. He was the recluse Upatissa. So So Venerable Sāriputta is now encouraging him to go deeper. Imagine, friend Yamaka, there being a householder, the son of a rich householder, an affluently rich man who is exceedingly wealthy and who rules over a vast territory, possessing countless assets, someone who moves about throughout his life while being surrounded by his armed bodyguards. This section of the sutta is really juicy. In fact, this was the reason why that student made that request of the sutta, because of the beauty of the simile that Venerable Sāriputta is about to present. So imagine, he says, this rich householder who has so much money, so many possessions, so much territory, that he can't move from one place to the next without being surrounded by bodyguards all the time. So he's very well protected. One day, a certain individual shows up, a viciously conniving assassin of a man, whose sole aim is to bring harm to this rich man, to destroy and kill him by depriving him of his life. Then he would start thinking, this affluently rich householder is exceedingly wealthy and rules over a vast territory, possessing countless assets. I can't just assault and try to take his life by force, for he is well protected. So I must first make him trust me, so I can get close enough to him, and only then will I be able to deprive him of his life and kill him. Thus, the assassin begins acting on his scheme by first approaching the rich householder and says this to him: I wish to serve you, Lord. Then that rich householder goes ahead and appoints him as one of his servants. And that assassin goes to work by pretending to be an obedient and selfless worker. Thus, he lets his master, the rich householder, see how he gets up in the mornings before him, and only retires to bed late at night after the rich householder had gone to sleep. In this way, the assassin works his charm by doing whatever he is told, going above and beyond what is expected of him as a servant, always being pleasant and agreeable in his conduct, using a sweet tongue and endearing in his speech, like most of the politicians we know. In time, the rich householder even begins to see this servant of his as a true friend, a faithful and kind companion, and as such, the rich householder starts putting more and more trust in him. Now, once the assassin notices that his long-term plan is working, whereby the householder has placed enough trust in him, then the moment he is alone with him, away from his protective bodyguards, he quickly pulls out his sharp knife and kills him, depriving the rich householder, his master, of his life. Now, what do you say, friend Yamaka, when that man came and approached the rich householder and told him, I wish to serve you, Lord? Wasn't he an assassin then? Or had he ceased being an assassin at that time, even though he was not yet recognized by the rich householder who was about to be killed as his assassin? So, did he stop being an assassin while he was going through the motions of pretending to be an obedient servant to him? How about when that man was pretending to be a selfless and obedient servant, waking up before his rich master and going to bed after the master had retired, working his charm by doing whatever he was told, going above and beyond what was expected of him as a servant, always being pleasant and agreeable in his conduct, using a sweet tongue and being endearing in his speech? Wasn't he an assassin then? Or had he ceased from being an assassin at the time, even though he was not yet recognized by the rich householder, about to be killed as his assassin? Or, Venerable Sāriputta continues, when the rich householder, his lord and master, began trusting him, enough so that he considered that man to be his true friend, whereby once he saw the opportunity of finally being alone with him, the man quickly pulled out his sharp knife and killed him. Wasn't he an assassin already? Or had he ceased from being an assassin up until that moment, even though he was not recognized all along by the rich householder who was about to be killed to be none other than his assassin? Yes, indeed, friend. This is Venerable Yamaka. He always was and never ceased being an assassin throughout, answered the Venerable Yamaka. Well, in just the same manner, friend Yamaka, the Putujjana, or the undisciplined, ignorant person, is both too dense to see and recognize the noble ones, as well as untrained and undisciplined in their Dhamma, for he is someone who, due to his untamed and crude personality, unable to recognize the superior person, even if he were to see them up close, nor is he skilled and educated in their teachings. And why is that? It is because he continues to regard form as inherent to being or having a self, or identifies a self to be possessing some kind of substantial form, or form to be inseparable from a self, or that there is a substantial self within form. Similarly, he regards feeling as inherent to being or having a self, or identifies a self to be possessing some kind of a substantial feeling, or feeling to be inseparable from a self, or that there is a substantial self in feeling. Similarly, he regards perception or memory, sanya, as inherent to being or having a self, or identifies a self to be possessing some kind of substantial perception or memory, or perception or memory to be inseparable from a self, or that there is a substantial self in perception or memory. By the way, it's very good to have the printout of this. That's why I have it uploaded on the website under Pali Suttas on mindrelease.com. So to have this as it's one thing to listen to it, to even watch me say this, but it's another thing when you have the actual printout in front of you. So it's really good to print those out and underline them, or add your own notes to them to help you remember. Because what Venerable Sāriputta is doing is going over in much more detail, unraveling the method to bring or to disentangle the Maya, the delusion, the illusion, this show, this movie of the five aggregates, because they cannot hold so long as there's no more conduct. There's no more acceptance of the conceit I am, the self idea, the atta. If it's there, then we're going to try our best to glue these five aggregates together in one form or another. So, but Venerable Sāriputta is using different ways of dismantling all that. Similarly, he says he regards habitual drives, sankharas. That's how I translate it. It's much more impactful than formations for me, as inherent to being or having a self, or identifies a self to be possessing some kind of substantial sankharas, or habitual drives to be inseparable from a self, or that there is a substantial self in habitual drives. Similarly, he regards sense awareness or consciousness, vijnana, as inherent to being or having a self, or identifies a self to be possessing some kind of substantial sense awareness or consciousness, or sense awareness or consciousness to be inseparable from a self, or that there is a substantial self in the sense awareness or consciousness. For truly, such a person does not see or understand form as it truly is, that is, being impermanent and transitory, and never otherwise. So form must be seen for what it truly is, impermanent, passing, and therefore suffering. We will get to that in a minute. Similarly, he does not see or understand feeling as it truly is, that is, being impermanent and transitory, and never otherwise. Similarly, he does not see or understand perception or memory as it truly is. That is, being impermanent and transitory, and never otherwise. Similarly, he does not see or understand habitual drives as they truly are, the sankharas. That is, being impermanent and transitory, and never otherwise. So please don't think of the sankhara as solid things, as consciousness as something solid, as feeling as something solid, as a perception or memory as something solid. That's what we're constantly being taught. Similarly, he does not see or understand sense awareness or consciousness they truly are, that is, being impermanent and transitory, never otherwise. So he's talking about the Putujjana now. In time, we're going to get to the section where we'll see how a noble disciple views them, the five aggregates. As a result, such a person does not see or understand form as it truly is, that is, being suffering and never otherwise. So form, now Venerable Sāriputta covered the impermanence section. Now he's addressing the form being none other than suffering itself. So here I'm going to just jump because it's a repetition. It's wonderful to read this, to hear this. And I haven't recorded this sutta, just purely the sutta, which I'm hoping I'll be doing because I just finished translating this. What I'll do is this week I will narrate this and put it up just the sutta without my, sharing the commentary. So you'll just get to hear it, and that's a very good one to kind of allow it to sink the words of Venerable Sāriputta. So he does not see or understand feeling as it truly is, perception or memory as it truly is, habitual drives as they truly are, sense awareness or consciousness as they truly are. That is, being suffering and never otherwise. So vijnana is never going to stop being impermanent. Because it's never going to stop being impermanent, it will never stop being also suffering. Such a person does not see or understand form as it truly is, that is, being without a substantial self and never otherwise. So now we're getting to the anatta section. Similarly with feeling, sanya, sankharas, and vijnanas as they truly are, that is, being without a substantial self and never otherwise. Furthermore, such a person does not see or understand form as it truly is, that is, being completely conditioned, sankata, and thereby causally produced, and never otherwise. Similarly with feelings, sanyas, sankharas, and vijnana as they truly are, that is, being completely conditioned and thereby causally produced, and never otherwise. In addition, such a person does not see or understand form as it truly is, that is, being your own assassin, seeking to deprive you of life and nothing else. What an image! Form, rupa, the aggregate rupa is your own assassin, secretly befriending you, making itself look like it's your coziest, most precious confidant. Meanwhile, it's changing all the time. Every time you look at yourself in the mirror, it's changing. The knees are not working. The skin is behaving differently. The eyes, perhaps, are not working. Your voice changes here and there. You're feeling amazing one day, the next day you have a cough. You have a stomach ache, a belly ache, some type of an ache. But wait a minute, we were friends. We were together. You were like, I trust you. What is this? Your assassin has pulled out his very, very sharp knife just when we least expect it. Similarly, he does not see or understand feeling as it truly is, that is, being your own assassin, seeking to deprive you of life and nothing else. that good feeling, the lovely feeling which you're yearning for, eagerly, passionately running after to repeat, is your assassin. Similarly, the repulsive feeling that you're aversive towards, you don't want to see that repeat, that also is your assassin. And by extension, the neutral feeling, the neither pleasurable nor painful, that also, that you push aside, you're just like, yeah, I'm going to ignore and disregard as if you're not even there, as I jump to more passionately driven, pleasurable feeling, because nothing's happening with this neutral feeling. Even that, because you missed an opportunity there. The neutral feeling has so much to teach us. It's a springboard to Nibbana. If there is sati. That's why we have to be present with sati and sampajanya, watchful. Those are gems. Similarly, he does not see or understand perception or memory as it truly is. That is, being your own assassin, your memory, seeking to deprive you of life and nothing else. Similarly, he does not see or understand habitual drives, the sankharas, as they truly are. That is, being your own assassin, seeking to deprive you of life and nothing else. Similarly, he does not see or understand sense awareness or consciousness as they truly are. That is, being your own assassin, seeking to deprive you of life and nothing else. Now, as a result, such a person becomes attracted to form and grabs tightly onto it. By becoming hopelessly identified with form and treating it as an innate asset of his. This belongs to me. The Puthujjana sees it as inseparable from his false view of a substantial self. Similarly, he becomes attracted to feeling and grabs tightly onto it. He becomes attracted to sanya, perception, memory, and grabs tightly onto it. He becomes attracted to sankharas, the habitual drives, and grabs tightly onto them. He becomes attracted to vijnana, the sense awareness and consciousnesses, and grabs tightly onto them by becoming hopelessly identified with vijnana, the consciousnesses that occur, coming in through the six sense doors, and treating them as innate assets of his. The Puthujjana sees them as inseparable from his false view of a substantial self. That substantial self is like the ground upon which you put your furniture in your house. That is the mind functioning of a Puthujjana, when none of them have to be there. Now, once he takes the bait and gets identified, thus becoming entangled and fully engaged with these five aggregates due to his tendency to grab onto them, he is then led on continuously to more and more suffering, all towards his detriment and lasting pain for a very long time. However, friend Yamaka, the learned and wise noble disciple is both able to see and recognize the noble ones, and as a result, he is trained and disciplined in their Dhamma, for he is someone who, due to his tamed and refined personality, is able to recognize the superior person and is skilled and educated in their teachings. And why is that? It is because he neither regards form as inherent to being or having a self, nor identifies a self to be possessing some kind of a substantial form, nor that form is something inseparable from a self, nor that there is a substantial form, a self in form. So now he is speaking for the noble disciple, the one who has seen the Dhamma, in this case, Venerable Yamaka. And whatever he said about the Puthujjana, now it will be in reverse form, in the sense that the noble disciple does not view these five aggregates as a self, nor looks for a self within these five aggregates, as in feeling, perceptions, sankharas, and vijnana. He's not looking for a self. He's not even identifying each of these as having a self, as something concrete, as something unchanging, as something permanent. That's another factor about a noble disciple. A noble disciple will never feel the need to advertise oneself. In fact, he or she will shun such a scenario because they have seen through the aggregates. Seeing it is enough for them. For truly, the noble disciple does see and understand form, feeling, sanya, sankharas, and vijnanas as they truly are, that is, being impermanent and transitory and never otherwise. He does see and understand form, feeling, perception, habitual drives, sense awareness as they truly are, being suffering and never otherwise. The noble disciple sees and understands form, feeling, perceptions or memories, habitual drives, sense awareness or consciousness as they truly are, that is, being without a substantial self. The noble disciple does see and understand form as it truly is, feeling as it truly is, perceptions, habitual drives, sense awareness as they truly are, that is, being completely conditioned and thereby causally produced and never otherwise. How do you think suffering is going to end in life otherwise with the help of the Dhamma? The Dhamma is not going to give you a stage of awakening that is a stage of awakening, meaning minus the visceral living experience of panya, changing your whole outlook on life. Otherwise, it's some kind of like in other religions, you see these moments of rapture or this, trance, this thing, none of that will save you from suffering. Understanding will. That's what Venerable Sāriputta is delineating here. This is a real experientially tasted reality for the person. The noble disciple does not see. The noble disciple does see and understand form, feeling, perceptions or memories, habitual drive, sense awareness or consciousness as they truly are. That is, being your own assassin, seeking to deprive you of life and nothing else. The noble disciple uses the five khandha, but he will never overestimate them. He will never become identified with them. Why? Because he doesn't get attracted to form, nor grabs tightly onto it. Similarly, he doesn't grab tightly onto feeling, perceptions or memories, habitual drives, or vijnana, or sense awareness or consciousnesses, nor grabs tightly onto them. And by not becoming identified with the sense awareness or consciousness and the rest of the khandhas, nor treating them as innate assets of his, the noble disciple sees them as they truly are. Therefore, he does not fall prey to the false notion of a substantial self. It's like going to a furniture store and looking at the furnitures. Going to IKEA. If there's an IKEA around where you live, you look at the furnitures, and you might even sit on a few of them. Pretend that you're there every once in a while to amuse yourself if you need to or have to, and then get up and go and leave. You don't have to make it into something that it is not. Remember, we're just traveling through. But everybody's grabbing this, grabbing that, grabbing this idea, grabbing that teaching, grabbing this feeling, grabbing this sankhara, this drive. This is who I am. This form. Now, because the noble disciple does not take the bait nor gets identified thus, by not becoming entangled nor engaged with these five aggregates due to seeing through the tendency to grab onto them, he is then led to further and further states of happiness for his lasting welfare and peace. And this is where Venerable Yamaka starts to speak. What a true blessing, friend Sāriputta. How wonderful to have such exceptional and kind venerables as companions in the holy life. What a joy to be experiencing the compassion and metta of our senior brother, who comes to selflessly admonish and teach us the Dhamma. I rejoice, since having heard the wise words of the Venerable Sāriputta's Dhamma talk, my heart has now become fully liberated from the contaminants by overcoming the very clinging itself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Lo and behold, Venerable Yamaka just declared his arahantship. In one sitting, he went through all the stages, listening. And this goes in the face of all those who doubtfully, dubiously, or sitting on their pile of it can't be this, it can't be that attitude, who say that arahantship cannot happen through listening. And here's another example. There's also Venerable Bahia, among others. But there's another beautiful example here of Venerable Yamaka, who was a Patujjana for all intents and purposes. At the beginning of the sutta, at the end of the sutta, he becomes an arahant. How wonderful is this Dhamma of Lord Buddha's? This is exactly why we have to really do our very best, each of us, to maintain it. And you can only truly, in my opinion, maintain the Dhamma through your own fervent practice, dedicated commitment to sila, to samadhi, and to the development of constant panya as you expose yourself to more and more of the teachings. Not the commentators, but the teachings found in the Discourse. So I will stop here and see if there are any questions. Beautiful sutta. And I'm thankful to that student who recommended this lovely, lovely sutta. I love the image of the assassin. I mean, it can't get more jugular than that. Next time you're looking at form, feeling, sannyas, sankharas, or vijnanas, think of one image, an assassin, secretly hiding, like a ninja. But it's not in a movie. It's your ninja with only one objective, your hitman coming at you, pretending to be your best of friends. I've seen many ninjas, in people's faces, such assassins. I didn't know I was seeing them, especially in terms of going to hospitals. I'm sure we all have, when you think of it in those terms. You've heard me recount the story of my adopted grandmother at the nursing home back in Los Angeles. I used to go and visit her every week, at least once, for 7 years until she died. I had met her as I was visiting there during a holiday. I think it was Easter. But every time I would go and see them sitting, all the elderly, eating or using the walker, each one would be on their own. There would hardly be relatives around visiting them. But you would see them. You would see them finally having exposed the fact that things were not as they believed them to be, meaning the assassin had removed his mask. Even the memories were killing them because they didn't have their loved ones for whom they toiled and struggled, this and that, and now they were there all on their own. The body was not functioning. They were wearing diapers. Okay, these people that used to wear suits and this and that looked beautiful in the 40s and 50s, and now are wearing diapers, soiling themselves. and they were aware. That's like being surrounded by your assassins. So now, if those things are not happening, you're not wearing a diaper. You still have your teeth. Please don't think that the assassins aren't there. They're still well camouflaged. They're not being detected yet. So, some thoughts. If there are no questions or comments, let us then transfer some merits. Akasatha Chabumata Deva Nagamahidika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakhantu Lokasasanam. Akasatha Chabumata Deva Nagamahidika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakhantu Desanam. Akasatha Chabumata Deva Nagamahidika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakhantu Mamparanti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May these visits to the suttas help your practice so that you attain that which you have not yet attained, so that you can taste what you have not yet tasted of this beautiful, beautiful Dhamma that is beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in its middle, and beautiful in its end. May the blessings of the Triple Gem be with you and all your loved ones. Sukhi Hotu. Until next time.